Captain Kang Minho stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant and watched the stars through the main screen. His hands gripped the rail in front of him as he thought about what was coming. The year was 2387, and Earth was dying. Not from disease or natural disaster, but from war. The aliens had come 3 years ago, and they wanted everything humans had built. The bridge was quiet except for the soft hum of computers and the breathing of his crew. Minho looked at each person working at their stations. These were good people who had families back on Earth. Soon they might never see those families again. The mission they were about to start would likely kill them all. Commander Yoon Tae-hyun walked up to stand beside his captain. Tae-hyun had been with Minho for 5 years, and they trusted each other completely. The first officer was younger than Minho, but just as brave. His dark eyes showed worry, but also determination. "The crew is ready, sir," Tae-hyun said quietly. "Dr. Lee has finished the final checks on the quantum drive. Engineer Kim says all weapons are at full power. We can leave whenever you give the order." Minho nodded slowly. Through the speakers came the voice of Admiral Park Sora from Earth Command. Her voice sounded tired and sad. The Admiral had been fighting this war since it started, and she had watched too many good ships get destroyed. She had sent hundreds of crews on missions knowing most would never return. Defiant. "This is Earth Command," Admiral Park said. "The enemy fleet is still gathering near Jupiter. Our scouts report over 3,000 ships. We have maybe 100 left that can fight. You know what this means?" Everyone on the bridge knew what it meant. Earth's military was finished. The United Earth Defense Force had fought hard, but the aliens were too strong and too many. The Vorthak Empire had brought ships from across the galaxy. They had weapons that could destroy planets and shields that human guns could barely scratch. "We understand, Admiral," Minho replied. "The Defiant is ready to begin Operation Last Hope." The name was not very creative, but it was honest. This really was humanity's last hope. The plan was simple and terrible. The Defiant would use its new quantum drive to jump deep into enemy space. Once there, they would try to find and destroy the Vorthak command ship. If they succeeded, it might confuse the alien fleet long enough for Earth to prepare better defenses. If they failed, then Earth would fall in days instead of weeks. Dr. Lee Ji-won walked onto the bridge carrying a data tablet. She was the smartest person Minho had ever met, and she had designed the quantum drive that made this mission possible. Her face looked worried and excited at the same time. The quantum drive was completely new technology, and they had never tested it in real combat conditions. "Captain, the drive is ready, but I need to tell you something important," Dr. Lee said. "The quantum field equations are still not perfect. There is a small chance that the jump will not take us where we want to go. The computer says there is a 97% chance of success, but that leaves 3% for something unexpected." Minho looked at his science officer. Dr. Lee was always honest about risks, and he trusted her completely. 3% did not sound like much, but when dealing with experimental technology, it could mean anything from a small navigation error to complete destruction of the ship. "What kind of unexpected result are we talking about, Doctor?" Minho asked. Dr. Lee looked at her tablet and then back at the captain. "The quantum drive works by folding space and time. If the fold goes wrong, we could end up anywhere in the galaxy. We could even end up in a different time or a different dimension. The math shows it is possible, but very unlikely." Tae-hyun stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, the mission is more important than the risk. If we do nothing, then Earth dies for certain. At least this way we have a chance." The bridge crew all nodded. They had volunteered for this mission knowing it was probably suicide. Navigator Oh Hyeji spoke up from her station. She was young but very skilled and had helped plan their route through enemy space. "Captain, I have calculated 17 different paths to the target. Even if the quantum jump is not perfect, we should be able to reach the Vorthak command ship. The enemy will not expect us to attack so deep in their territory." Minho walked to the center of the bridge and sat in his command chair. Around him, his crew prepared for what might be their last mission. Engineer Kim Sun-ho reported that all systems were working perfectly. Weapons Officer Cho Min-seo said the new plasma cannons were charged and ready. Communications Officer Bang Ji-soo confirmed they had a secure link to Earth Command. "Admiral Park, this is Captain Minho," he said into his headset. "The Defiant is ready to depart. We will try to reach the command ship within 6 hours. If we succeed, you should see the enemy fleet lose coordination. If we fail, then you will know because the invasion will begin immediately. Admiral Park's voice came back strong and clear. Captain Minho, you and your crew represent the best of humanity. Whatever happens today, know that Earth is proud of you. May fortune favor your mission. Earth, command out. The communication ended, and the bridge fell silent. Minho looked around at his crew one more time. These were the people he would die with if things went wrong. They were also the people who might save billions of human lives if things went right. Dr. Lee began the quantum sequence, Minho ordered. All stations report ready status. Each crew member reported their systems were prepared. The ship's main lights dimmed as power flowed to the quantum drive. Through the deck, Minho could feel a strange vibration that seemed to come from everywhere. At once, the quantum drive was starting to fold space around the ship. Quantum field is building, Dr. Lee announced. 30 seconds to jump. Minho activated the ship's communication system so he could speak to the entire crew. 300 people served on the Defiant, and they all deserved to hear from their captain before they risked everything. This is the captain speaking to all. Hands. In 20 seconds, we will make the jump that could save Earth or could kill us all. Each of you volunteered for this mission, knowing the risks. You are the bravest people I have ever known. Whatever happens next, remember that we do this. For every human child who deserves to grow up free. For Earth. The crew responded as one voice through the ship. For Earth. Dr. Lee counted down the final seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, jump. The universe exploded into light around them. The main screen showed, space twisting and bending in ways that hurt to look at. The ship shook and groaned as forces beyond human understanding pulled at its hull. Then suddenly everything went wrong. Alarms started screaming throughout the ship. The quantum field began to collapse, but not in the way Dr. Lee had calculated. Instead of a controlled exit from the jump, the field started to tear apart. Through the chaos, Dr. Lee shouted that they were not going to arrive at their planned destination. "Captain, the field is unstable," she yelled over the noise. "We are falling into some kind of quantum void. I do not know where we are going." The last thing Minho saw before the universe went white was the face of his first officer, Tae-hyun, reaching toward him. Then the UES Defiant vanished from normal space and time, taking its crew into the unknown. Behind them, Earth waited for news that would never come, and the alien fleet prepared to destroy the last home of humanity. Captain Kang Minho opened his eyes and felt pain throughout his entire body. The bridge of the Defiant was dark except for emergency lighting that cast red shadows everywhere. He could hear people moaning and the sound of damaged equipment sparking. Slowly, he pushed himself up from the floor where the quantum jump had thrown him. "Report!" he called out weakly. His voice echoed strangely as if the air itself was different. Around him, his crew was slowly getting back to their feet. "Commander." Tae-hyun had a cut on his forehead but was already checking on the other officers. Dr. Lee was at her station trying to read damaged displays. "Sir, the quantum drive is offline," Dr. Lee said. Her voice sounded confused and worried. "The readings I am getting do not make sense. According to these instruments, we are not in normal space anymore. We are somewhere else entirely. Navigator." Oh Hyeji looked up from her station with wide eyes. "Captain, I cannot find any familiar stars. The navigation computer says we are not in our galaxy. In fact, it says we are not in any galaxy at all. We are floating in empty space, but the space itself is wrong somehow." Minho felt his heart sink. The 3% chance Dr. Lee had mentioned was happening. They were lost in whatever place the broken quantum jump had taken them. He activated the ship's communication system to speak to the entire crew. "This is the captain to all hands. We have experienced a malfunction during the quantum jump. All department heads report to the bridge immediately. Medical teams treat the injured. Engineering teams assess ship damage. We will figure out where we are and how to get home." Over the next several hours, the reports came in, and none of them were good. Engineer Kim Sun-ho told them that the quantum drive was badly damaged and would need weeks to repair. Medical officer Dr. Cha Young-gi reported 37 crew members injured, but none killed. The ship's hull was intact, but many systems were working poorly. Dr. Lee spent hours studying the readings from their sensors. Finally, she called everyone together to explain what she had learned. Her face was pale and her hands shook slightly as she spoke. "We are in what I can only call a parallel dimension," she said. "The laws of physics are similar to our universe, but not exactly the same. Time moves differently here. Space has properties that do not exist in our reality. The quantum jump did not just move us through space, but pushed us sideways into another layer of existence." Commander Tae-hyun asked the question everyone was thinking. "Can we get home?" Dr. Lee was quiet for a long moment before answering. "I do not know. The quantum drive might be able to create another fold, but without knowing exactly how we got here, I cannot calculate how to reverse the process. We could end up even further from home, or we could be destroyed completely." The next few days were difficult for everyone on the ship. The crew worked hard to repair damaged systems, while Dr. Lee and her science team tried to understand their new environment. Engineer Kim and his people worked around the clock to fix the quantum drive. Captain Minho kept everyone focused on their duties, but privately, he wondered if they would ever see Earth again. On the 5th day, Navigator Oh Hyeji made an amazing discovery. While scanning the empty space around them, she detected artificial structures in the distance. They were too far away to see clearly, but the computer confirmed they were not natural formations. "Captain, there are buildings out there," she reported excitedly. "Huge buildings floating in space with no planet or star to support them. They appear to be abandoned, but some of them are larger than entire cities." Minho made the decision to investigate. The Defiant moved carefully toward the strange structures using conventional engines since the quantum drive was still broken. As they got closer, the crew could see that Oh Hyeji was right. Massive buildings floated in the void connected by bridges and tunnels that stretched for kilometers. Dr. Lee studied the structures through the ship's sensors and made another startling discovery. "Captain, these buildings are millions of years old, but they are made from materials that should not exist. The construction uses technologies far beyond anything humans have ever developed. Whoever built these things understood physics in ways we cannot imagine. The structures were clearly abandoned. No lights showed in the windows and no energy readings suggested active technology. But as the Defiant moved closer, they could see that the buildings were still intact despite their age. Whatever civilization had built them was gone, but their creations remained. Commander Tae-hyun suggested sending a team to explore one of the smaller structures. Captain Minho agreed, but insisted on strict safety procedures. They chose a building that was only a few hundred meters long and seemed to have docking areas designed for spacecraft. The away team consisted of Dr. Lee, Engineer Kim, Security Chief Lim Kangmin, and Specialist Park Haeun, who was expert in alien technology. They wore full environment suits and carried enough supplies for 12 hours of exploration. The Defiant stayed close by, ready to evacuate them if anything went wrong. The team entered the alien structure through an airlock that somehow recognized their ship and opened automatically. Inside, they found corridors and rooms that clearly had been designed for living beings, but the proportions were strange. The ceilings were very high and the doorways were wide enough for creatures much larger than humans. Dr. Lee took readings with her instruments and discovered that the air inside was clean and breathable. The artificial gravity worked perfectly even after millions of years. Emergency lighting activated as they moved through the corridors, suggesting that some systems still functioned. In what appeared to be a central chamber, they found something that changed everything. The room contained hundreds of crystal formations that glowed with soft blue light. When Dr. Lee approached one of the crystals, it responded by projecting images into the air around them. The images showed the history of the beings who had built this place. They called themselves the Architects, and they had been an ancient race that existed long before humans evolved on Earth. The crystals were their method of storing knowledge and memories for future generations. Through the crystal projections, the away team learned that the Architects had faced a crisis similar to what humanity was experiencing. Invaders from another reality had attacked their civilization with weapons that could destroy entire star systems. The Architects had fought bravely, but they were losing the war. Their solution was radical beyond anything humans had imagined. Instead of fleeing or surrendering, the Architects chose to transform themselves completely. They merged their minds with their technology, becoming living machines that existed partially outside normal space and time. This transformation gave them power beyond imagination, but it also meant they were no longer the same species they had been. The crystal showed how the architects used their new abilities to defeat the invaders not through violence, but by changing the fundamental nature of the enemy. They removed the invaders' ability to feel aggression while leaving their intelligence intact. The war ended not with destruction, but with the transformation of both sides into something better. Dr. Lee realized that the architects' knowledge could help humanity, but using it would require making the same choice they had made. Humans would have to give up being purely human in order to gain the power needed to save Earth. The away team spent hours studying the crystal archives and learning about architect technology. They discovered that the transformation process was still possible, and that the ancient machines needed to perform it were still functional in some of the larger structures. When they returned to the Defiant and reported their findings, the entire crew was silent for a long time. Captain Minho called a meeting of all department heads to discuss what they had learned. The choice facing them was terrible but simple. They could remain human and probably never return home, or they could transform themselves into something that might be able to save Earth. Dr. Lee explained that the transformation would not destroy their personalities or memories. They would still be the same people, but with abilities that normal humans did not possess. The Defiant itself would become a living ship capable of traveling between dimensions and manipulating reality in limited ways. Commander Tae-hyun was the first to speak. "Sir, if this transformation can help us save Earth, then we have to consider it. We volunteered for a suicide mission anyway. At least this way our sacrifice might actually accomplish something." One by one, the other officers agreed. They had seen what the architects accomplished, and they understood that conventional human technology could never defeat enemies like the Vorthak Empire. If they wanted to save their species, they would have to evolve beyond what they currently were. Captain Minho made the hardest decision of his life. He authorized Dr. Lee to begin studying the transformation process in detail. If they were going to change themselves into something new, they needed to understand exactly what that meant and how to control the process. The crew of the Defiant had come to this strange dimension as the last hope of humanity. Now they prepared to become something that was no longer entirely human in order to fulfill that hope. They did not know if Earth still existed or if their transformation would work, but they knew they had to try. The transformation took 3 months to complete, and it changed everything about the Defiant and her crew. Captain Minho could feel the ship around him like it was part of his own body. The walls hummed with life, and the engines responded to his thoughts as much as his commands. He was still human, but he was also something more now. Dr. Lee had guided the process carefully, using the knowledge from the architect crystals. The crew members kept their individual minds and personalities, but they could now share thoughts and feelings when they chose to. The ship itself had become alive in a way that was difficult to explain. It was not just a machine anymore, but a living entity that wanted to protect its crew and complete their mission. When they were ready to attempt the return journey, Dr. Lee activated systems that had never existed on the original Defiant. The quantum drive was gone, replaced by technology that worked by folding reality itself. The ship could now travel between dimensions without the dangerous unpredictability that had brought them here. Commander Tae-hyun stood beside his captain, on the bridge that looked the same, but felt completely different. Both men could sense the emotions of their crew throughout the ship. Everyone was nervous and excited and terrified about what they might find when they returned home. "Beginning dimensional translation," Dr. Lee announced. She no longer needed to touch controls to operate the ship's systems. Her consciousness was linked directly to the navigation computers, and she could calculate their path by thinking about it. The space around them began to shimmer and bend, but this time the process felt natural instead of violent. The Defiant slipped sideways through reality like a fish swimming through water. Within moments, they emerged into normal space near a star system that should have been familiar. Navigator. Oh, Hyeji gasped when she saw what was displayed on the main screen. "Captain, this is the solar system, but it has been completely changed. Earth is still there, but the surface looks dead. There are massive structures in orbit that I do not recognize. The moon has been partially destroyed and turned into some kind of industrial complex." Minho felt sick as he realized what they were seeing. Earth had fallen, and the aliens had been mining it for resources for over a century. The planet that had been green and blue when they left was now brown and gray. Huge scars marked where strip mining operations had removed entire mountain ranges. "How long were we gone?" Minho asked quietly. Dr. Lee checked her instruments and her face went pale. "Captain, according to the star positions and the decay of radioactive materials, we have been gone for 127 years. Time dilation in the other dimension was much more severe than I calculated." The crew stood in shocked silence as they absorbed this information. Everyone they had known on Earth was dead. Their families had lived and died while the Defiant was trapped in another dimension. The war they had left to fight was long over, and humanity had lost. Engineer Kim Sunho was the first to speak. "Sir, the alien installations around Earth are heavily defended. I count over 200 warships in the system, and they look much more advanced than the ships we faced in our time. They have had more than a century to improve their technology." Security Chief Lim Kang-min was studying the readings from his sensors. "Captain, I am detecting human life signs on Earth and several other worlds in the system. The population appears to be much smaller than it was when we left, but there are definitely survivors." This news gave the crew hope, even though the situation looked hopeless. Humans had survived somehow despite losing the war. The question was whether they were free or living as slaves under alien rule. Communications Officer Bang Jisu suddenly looked up from her station with excitement. "Captain, I am receiving a transmission on an old Earth defense frequency. It is heavily encrypted, but I think I can decode it." The message, when they finally heard it, was brief and spoke of things that made little sense to them. Someone named Commander An Jaemin was requesting supply drops for resistance operations on 3 different worlds. The transmission mentioned enemy patrols and the need for medical supplies for human prisoners. "There is still a resistance," Taehyun said with satisfaction. "Some humans are still fighting even after all these years." Minho made a decision that would have been impossible with the old Defiant, but was easy now that the ship could bend reality. "We are going to contact this resistance and find out exactly what has happened to humanity. Then we are going to help them take back what is ours." The Defiant used its new abilities to become invisible to enemy sensors and moved closer to Earth. They discovered that most of the human population lived in underground cities or on remote worlds where the aliens used them as workers. The resistance was small and poorly equipped, but they had never stopped fighting. Commander An Jaemin was suspicious when the Defiant first contacted him. His grandfather had told him stories about the ship that disappeared during the last desperate battle, but Jaemin found it hard to believe that the same vessel had returned after more than a century. "Prove that you are who you claim to be," Jaemin demanded during their first conversation. Anyone could have found records of the Defiant and decided to use them for some kind of trick. Captain Minho provided classified information that only the original crew would have known, including personal details about Admiral Park and the exact specifications of the quantum drive. Jaemin finally accepted that he was really talking to the legendary ship and its crew. The Resistance leader explained what had happened after the Defiant vanished. Earth's defenses had collapsed within weeks, and the alien fleets had occupied every human world. At first, the Vorthak Empire had treated humans as a conquered people, but over time they had discovered that human minds were useful for enhancing their artificial intelligence systems. "They harvest our thoughts and memories," Jaemin explained, with anger in his voice. "Humans are captured and connected to machines that extract our neural patterns. The aliens use our creativity and problem-solving abilities to make their technology more effective. Most people who undergo the process die, but the aliens do not care because there are always more humans to replace them." Dr. Lee was horrified by this revelation. "They are literally stealing human consciousness to improve their machines. That is why they have kept humanity alive instead of simply exterminating us." The crew of the Defiant learned that approximately 2 billion humans survived across dozens of worlds. Most lived in terrible conditions and had no hope of freedom. The Resistance could only protect small groups and conduct minor sabotage operations against alien installations. "We need to change the entire balance of power," Minho told his crew during a planning meeting. "The aliens have had over a century to consolidate their control and develop countermeasures against normal human tactics. But they have never faced anything like what we have become." Dr. Lee suggested that they begin by using their new abilities to disrupt alien operations in ways that could not be explained by conventional technology. If they could make enemy installations fail mysteriously, it would inspire the human resistance and confuse the alien commanders. The Defiant began a campaign of invisible sabotage across the solar system. Alien ships would suddenly lose power, for no apparent reason. Computer systems would malfunction and display strange errors. Weapons would fail during critical moments, and shield generators would shut down without warning. The effects were exactly what Dr. Lee had predicted. Human resistance groups became bolder when they realized that something was helping them. Alien. Commanders grew paranoid and began to suspect sabotage, but could never find evidence of how their systems were being attacked. Within 6 months of the Defiant's return, successful resistance operations increased by 300%. Humans began to believe that liberation might actually be possible. Stories spread through the underground networks about a ghost ship that appeared wherever the aliens were weakest. Captain Minho decided it was time to reveal themselves to the human population. Using the Defiant's reality-manipulating technology, they broadcast a message to every human settlement in the galaxy simultaneously. The message was simple, but it changed everything. This is Captain Kang Minho of the United Earth Defense Force ship Defiant. We have returned from exile to continue the fight for human freedom. The war is not over, and Earth will be free again. All resistance groups prepare for coordinated operations. All human civilians prepare for liberation. We are coming home. The broadcast caused chaos throughout alien-controlled space. Human resistance cells that had operated independently for decades suddenly realized they were part of something much larger. On worlds where humans had given up hope, people began to believe that freedom was possible. The alien response was swift and brutal. Vorthak fleets moved to destroy any world where human resistance activity increased. The aliens were determined to crush this new threat before it could grow strong enough to challenge their empire. But the Defiant was no longer fighting alone. Commander Jamin coordinated with resistance leaders across the galaxy to begin simultaneous uprisings on every human world. The transformed crew of the Defiant provided support that seemed like magic to fighters who had only known conventional weapons. The final battle for humanity's freedom was about to begin, and this time humans had advantages their enemies could not. The first coordinated resistance operation began on 12 human worlds simultaneously, and the results surprised everyone, including Captain Minho and his crew. What should have been desperate last stands by poorly equipped rebels turned into stunning victories as the Defiant provided support that seemed impossible to enemy observers. On Kepler 442b, Colonel Bak Minji led her fighters against an alien stronghold that had been considered impregnable for 40 years. Just as enemy reinforcements arrived to crush her small force, every alien weapon system in the complex suddenly stopped working. The enemy ships crashed into the ground as their engines failed, and their shields disappeared without explanation. Dr. Shin Dongwu had been working in secret laboratories on Tau Ceti developing weapons from salvaged alien technology. When his resistance cell finally revealed themselves, they found that their improvised guns now worked far better than they should have. Energy beams that should have been weak enough only to disable enemy equipment instead cut through alien armor, like it was paper. Captain Nam Yunji had been running rescue operations for 30 years, saving human prisoners from alien labor camps. During the coordinated uprising, her small fleet of converted cargo ships suddenly found themselves protected by shields that deflected even the most powerful enemy weapons. She rescued over 10,000 people in a single day. The success of these operations sent shockwaves through both human and alien populations. For humans, it proved that real liberation was possible after more than a century of slavery. For the aliens, it demonstrated that they faced an enemy unlike anything they had encountered before. Commander An Jemin coordinated the resistance from a hidden base in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. His communication center received reports from across the galaxy as human fighters struck back against their oppressors. Each victory made the next one easier as alien forces became confused and demoralized. "The enemy is starting to panic," Jamin reported to Captain Minho during one of their regular conversations. "They are pulling ships back from the outer colonies to defend their core worlds. Some alien commanders are requesting massive reinforcements because they cannot explain how we are achieving these victories." But the celebrations were brief because the aliens began to adapt their tactics in disturbing ways. The Vorthak Empire deployed their most advanced artificial intelligence systems to hunt for the source of human coordination. These AI hunters were different from normal alien technology because they had been enhanced with neural patterns harvested from captured humans. Dr. Lee discovered this horrifying truth when she analyzed the wreckage of an alien ship that the Defiant had destroyed. Hidden within the ship's computer core were consciousness patterns that she recognized. They belonged to Admiral Park Sora and other Earth defense officers who had been captured decades earlier. The aliens have been using human minds to power their artificial intelligence, Dr. Lee explained to the crew with disgust in her voice. They take the neural patterns of military officers and scientists and use them to make their computers think like humans. These AI hunters can predict our tactics because they literally contain pieces of human consciousness. This revelation changed everything about their war against the aliens. The enemy was not just using human bodies for labor, but human minds for intelligence. Every human who had been captured and processed contributed to making alien technology more effective against their own species. Commander Tai Hyun was the first to understand the full implications of what they were facing. Sir, these AI hunters will be able to counter everything we try because they think like us. They know how humans plan and react because they have human consciousness built into their programming. The truth of his words became clear during the next series of operations when several resistance missions failed catastrophically. The AI hunters seemed to know exactly where human forces would attack and how they would try to escape. Resistance leaders who had been successful for years found their best tactics turned against them. Captain Minho realized that defeating these enhanced machines would require the Defiant and her crew to evolve beyond purely human thinking. They would need to incorporate some of the alien logic they had learned from the Architect crystals while maintaining their human values and emotions. We have to become something that the AI hunters cannot predict, Minho told his crew. They can counter human tactics because they contain human minds, but they have never encountered consciousness that is both human and something else. Dr. Lee began working with the ship's living systems to develop new forms of thought that combined human creativity with alien mathematics. The process was difficult and sometimes painful, as the crew learned to think in ways that their original brains could never have managed. Engineer Kim Sunho was the first to master the new thinking patterns. During a test operation, he simultaneously considered 17 different tactical possibilities while maintaining emotional connections to his human crewmates. The combination allowed him to develop strategies that were both logically perfect and emotionally satisfying. The next major test came when the aliens sent a fleet of AI hunters to destroy the resistance base where Commander Jamin was coordinating operations. The enemy ships were guided by consciousness patterns from some of Earth's greatest military minds, and they moved with precision that would have been impossible for normal alien forces. But the Defiant was ready for them. Captain Minho and his crew used their evolved thinking to predict not just what the AI hunters would do, but how they would analyze human responses. They created false patterns that looked like human tactical thinking, but led the enemy into carefully prepared traps. The battle lasted only 30 minutes, but it completely changed the balance of power in the solar system. Every AI hunter was destroyed, and their wreckage provided the resistance with technology that had never been available to humans before. More importantly, the victory proved that evolved human consciousness could defeat even the most sophisticated alien artificial intelligence. Word of the victory spread through resistance networks across the galaxy. Human fighters who had been losing hope began to believe that they could actually win their freedom. On worlds where humans had accepted slavery as permanent people started planning uprisings. The aliens recognized that they faced a new kind of threat and began mobilizing their full military power. Fleets that had been scattered across the galaxy protecting different alien species were recalled to human space. The Vorthak Empire issued orders that the human rebellion must be crushed, completely regardless of the cost. Dr. Lee monitored alien communications and reported that over 10,000 enemy ships were moving toward the solar system. Captain, they are bringing everything they have. This will not be a normal battle, but a war of extermination. They have decided that humans are too dangerous to be allowed to exist even as slaves. The crew of the Defiant faced a choice that would determine the fate of their entire species. They could continue fighting as they had been using their new abilities to support conventional resistance operations. but conventional warfare could never defeat the massive fleet that was coming to destroy every human world. Captain Minho called a meeting of all department heads to discuss their options. The only solution that offered real hope was also the most dangerous. They could use the architect technology to offer transformation to other humans, giving them abilities similar to what the Defiant crew had gained. The process would be voluntary, Dr. Lee explained. Any human who chose to undergo transformation would gain enhanced intelligence and limited reality manipulation abilities. They would also be able to coordinate perfectly with other transformed humans, but the change would be permanent and irreversible. Commander Tae-hyun supported the idea immediately. Sir, we have seen what the transformation can accomplish. If even 10% of humanity chose to undergo the process, we would have millions of enhanced humans to fight the aliens. Security Chief Lim Kangmin was more cautious. Captain, we do not know what long-term effects the transformation might have. We have only been changed for a few months. What if there are problems that only appear after years or decades? The debate continued for hours, as the crew considered every aspect of offering transformation to the human population. They would be asking people to give up their basic humanity in exchange for the power needed to save their species. It was the same choice the architects had made millions of years earlier. In the end, Captain Minho made the decision that would change humanity forever. They would broadcast the transformation protocol to every human in the galaxy and let each person choose for themselves whether to remain baseline human or become something new. The greatest awakening in human history was about to begin, and the fate of the species would depend on how many people chose to embrace a future beyond anything their ancestors had ever imagined. Dr. Lee spent 3 days preparing the transformation protocol for mass distribution across the galaxy. The process had to be simplified so that humans without scientific training could understand what they were choosing. At the same time, it had to remain safe enough that people would not be harmed if they decided to undergo the change. Captain Minho recorded a message that would accompany the protocol transmission. He explained who he was and how the Defiant had acquired the technology that made transformation possible. Most importantly, he emphasized that the choice was voluntary and that humans who remained unchanged would be protected and valued just as much as those who transformed. This transformation will give you abilities beyond normal human limits, Minho said in his broadcast. You will gain enhanced intelligence and the power to manipulate reality in small ways. You will also be able to coordinate perfectly with other transformed humans, but you will still be yourself, with your own thoughts and feelings and memories. Commander Tae-hyun worked with the ship's communication systems to ensure the message would reach every human settlement simultaneously. The transmission would bypass alien monitoring systems and appear directly on any device capable of receiving signals. Every human in the galaxy would have the opportunity to make this choice. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours of the broadcast, resistance leaders reported that millions of humans were requesting more information about the transformation process. On some worlds, entire populations decided to undergo the change together. On others, people formed discussion groups to debate whether transformation was the right choice. Commander An Jamin coordinated with transformed humans as they began appearing across the galaxy. The change was visible within minutes of completing the protocol. Transformed humans developed a slight blue glow in their eyes and gained the ability to communicate through thought as well as speech. Colonel Bayek Minji was among the first resistance leaders to undergo transformation, and the change in her abilities was remarkable. She could now analyze battlefield conditions with perfect accuracy and coordinate her fighters with precision that seemed supernatural. Her tactical planning improved so dramatically that she began winning battles against forces 10 times larger than her own. Dr. Shin Dongwoo found that transformation enhanced his scientific abilities beyond anything he had imagined possible. He could understand alien technology by simply looking at it and develop countermeasures in minutes rather than months. His laboratories began producing weapons and equipment that rivaled anything the aliens possessed. The transformation spread through human populations like a wave of awakening. Approximately 60% of humans chose to undergo the change, while 40% decided to remain in their original form. The choice created no conflict, because transformed humans felt protective instincts toward baseline humans and wanted to ensure their safety and freedom. Captain Nam Yunji discovered that her rescue operations became incredibly efficient after transformation. She could sense the location of human prisoners from vast distances and coordinate rescues using abilities that allowed her ships to become temporarily invisible or intangible. Her fleet saved over 1 million people in the month following her transformation. The alien response to human transformation was swift and terrifying. The Vorthak Empire declared total war against humanity and began moving to destroy every world where humans lived. Over 15,000 alien warships converged on human space with orders to exterminate the species completely. "They are not trying to reconquer us," reported Communications Officer Bang Ji-soo as she monitored enemy transmissions. "The aliens have decided that transformed humans represent an existential threat to their empire. They want to wipe us out before we become too powerful to defeat." The final battle began at Earth itself, where the aliens had established their primary command complex. The massive structure orbited where the moon had once been and controlled alien operations across dozens of star systems. If the resistance could destroy it, the entire enemy war effort would collapse into chaos. Captain Minho led a combined fleet of human ships toward Earth, while transformed humans on the planet prepared to support the attack from the surface. The alien defenders numbered in the thousands, but they had never faced an enemy like humanity had become. The battle was unlike anything that had ever occurred in the galaxy. Transformed humans used their reality manipulation abilities to coordinate attacks across multiple dimensions simultaneously. They could make their ships exist in several places at once, or phase through enemy weapons while maintaining the ability to fire their own guns. Dr. Lee discovered that when thousands of transformed humans focused their abilities together, they could alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. Enemy ships found their weapons turned into harmless light while their shields became as fragile as paper. The aliens could not understand how their most advanced technology was being defeated by what appeared to be impossible phenomena. Engineer Kim Sun-ho led a strike team that infiltrated the alien command complex using the ability to become partially intangible. His team moved through the structure like ghosts and reached the central control chamber, where they found something that changed their understanding of the war. The command complex was not just a military installation, but a massive consciousness harvesting facility. Millions of human neural patterns were stored in crystal matrices that powered the alien empire's most important systems. Every human who had been captured over the past century contributed to making alien civilization more advanced and efficient. Captain, the entire alien empire depends on stolen human consciousness, Kim reported through the quantum communication link. Their technology is actually human creativity and problem-solving ability channeled through alien machines. If we can free these stored minds, we can cripple their entire civilization. The plan that emerged was audacious beyond anything the Resistance had previously attempted. Instead of simply destroying the alien complex, they would liberate the stored human consciousness and integrate it with the transformed human network. The combined mental power of both transformed and stored humans would be used to fundamentally alter the nature of the alien invaders. Dr. Lee coordinated the consciousness liberation while Captain Minho led the transformed humans in a reality manipulation technique on a galactic scale. They reached into the alien ships throughout human space and changed the neural programming that made the invaders aggressive and conquest-oriented. The transformation of the aliens was not violent or destructive. Instead, it removed their capacity for causing unnecessary harm while leaving their intelligence and culture intact. Alien soldiers who had been ruthless conquerors suddenly found themselves unable to understand why they had wanted to hurt other living beings. The war ended, not with the destruction of the alien fleets, but with their peaceful withdrawal from human space. The Vorthak Empire collapsed as a military force, but survived as a civilization that was no longer interested in conquest. Other alien species that had been forced to serve the Empire also found themselves free to pursue their own destinies. Commander Tae-hyun stood beside his captain on the bridge of the Defiant as they watched alien ships departing the solar system. The transformation had succeeded beyond their greatest hopes. Humanity was free, and the galaxy was at peace for the first time in millennia. "Sir, what do we do now?" Tae-hyun asked. "The mission we started over a century ago is complete, but I do not think our work is finished." Captain Minho looked at the transformed Earth below them where billions of humans, both baseline and enhanced, were rebuilding their civilization. The planet was already showing signs of recovery as advanced technology removed the scars left by alien mining operations. "Our work is just beginning," Minho replied. "There are other species in other galaxies facing the same threats we overcame. The Defiant will become the flagship of an exploration and protection fleet. We will find those who need help and offer them the same choice we were given." Dr. Lee had already detected signals from distant galaxies indicating civilizations under attack by forces similar to what humanity had faced. The transformed humans possessed the knowledge and abilities needed to help these species, but they would never force their assistance on anyone. Years later, the Defiant encountered another dying civilization whose enemies had nearly destroyed them completely. Captain Minho's consciousness, now fully integrated with the living ship, spoke to their leader with words that carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. "We understand your pain because we have walked the same path. We know what it means to face extinction and to make choices that change what you fundamentally are. If you want our help, we will share what we have learned, but the decision must be yours to make." The cycle of salvation continued as humanity took its place as protectors of the galaxy. The ship that had vanished during Earth's darkest hour had returned to become the foundation of a new age where no species would face extinction alone. The crew that had chosen to transform themselves to save their people now offered that same choice to others who faced impossible odds. Captain Kang Minho had begun his final mission believing he would die to give humanity a small chance at survival.